Hello everyone and welcome to this video on the HTML full course by Edureka. HTML is a standard markup language used for creating and structuring web pages and web applications. It defines the structure and layout of the content on the web, using a system of tags and attributes to format text, insert images, create links, build forms, and more. HTML provides a foundation for web development, allowing developers to define the elements and their relationship within the web page, ensuring consistency and accessibility across different platforms and devices. Before we begin, let's outline today's agenda for this HTML full course. First, we will explore HTML, the markup language used for creating and structuring web pages and applications. We'll then guide you through setting up Visual Studio Code for HTML development, ensuring your environment supports syntax highlighting and live preview features. Following this, we'll explore the basic structure of HTML, including essential elements like doc type, HTML head and body, and their purposes in organizing content. Next, we'll provide a step-by-step guide to creating your first HTML page. Moving forward, we'll delve into practical HTML tags and their functionalities, covering tags such as paragraphs, tags for inserting images, line breaks for creating hyperlinks, and more. Following this, we'll discuss the implementation of lists using div for content organization and creating input forms with form and various input tags. We'll then move on to the structuring tabular data using table, tr, th, and td tags, emphasizing their roles in data presentation. We'll then explore the integration of HTML in block structures, highlighting how HTML elements can be used to format and structure blog posts effectively. We'll then introduce the basics of combining HTML with CSS for web design, ensuring your understanding of how HTML forms and structures while CSS enhances presentation and layout. Finally, we'll conclude with a discussion on commonly asked HTML interview questions and answers, preparing you for web development interviews. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated on the latest tech content from Edureka. Also visit the Edureka website for the full stack developer course, the link to which is given in the description box below.
So the idea behind HTML was a modest one. When Tim Berners-Lee was putting together his first elementary browsing and authoring system for the web, he created a quick little hypertext language that would serve his purposes. He imagined dozens or even hundreds of hypertext formats in the future and smart clients that could easily negotiate and translate documents from servers all across the internet. Now HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is a standard markup language for creating web pages and web applications. It is used to describe the structure of the web pages using a process called markup. Now HTML mostly constitutes of elements, and these elements are the building blocks of any HTML page and are represented by tags.
Now let's get started with the installation and setup of our text editor for running of HTML code. Now we need only two things, that is a web browser and a text editor. So our favorite would be VS Code. For that, go to your Chrome browser and type VS Code and hit enter. You can see the first website, click on that. You can download it from here. We are using Windows OS, so we'll click on this. If you are using Mac OS, click on the above. We can see the download has started. We can see our download has finished. Now I'll just go ahead and open it. So click on I accept the agreement and next. Keep the path default because it is really helpful in later stages. Go to next. Install the VS Code. Make sure you check all the three checkboxes because then you can open your files from the Window Explorer itself using VS Code. Click on next and then just wait for installation. Now the installation has finished. Let's launch it. So before that, I'll just go to my desktop and close all of this. I'll create a new folder and name it my projects. I'm just going to move it over here, go here. Now go to file, click on open folder. So all your files would be opening there. Make sure you select the folder where you wanted it. So we can see my project over there. I'm going to close the welcome screen. Before we start with HTML code, the HTML code get messy when you write it on your own. To deal with that, I'm going to install Prettier. Go ahead and install this. We can see this is installed and it is pretty famous. After that, install live server. I'll just go ahead and click on install. Now wait for a while, it is installed. Now let's go back to our files. I'll create a new file. Let me close this first. I'll create a new file, index.html. Make sure your extensions are correct. Type exclamatory mark and hit enter. This is the default that will come up. So in the body, we'll be typing h1 and type hello everyone. After that, just save it, Control S, and I'm gonna right click on it, open with live server. So by default, it will be opening on 5500 port. So we can see hello everyone is there. I'll be using P. Let's save it and run it again. We can see the button has appeared over here. I hope now you know how to run HTML code.
I have a quiz question for you guys, and the question is, what is the correct HTML syntax to display an image using the image tag? And the options are given on the screen. If you know the correct answer, please leave it in the comment section below.
Now let me just give you a brief introduction to the structure of HTML. Now this is also called an HTML boilerplate. So firstly, an HTML boilerplate begins with the HTML tags, which tells the browser that this is an HTML page and this is where it begins from. Next comes the head tag, which contains most of the meta information about the document. The head tag normally also contains the link to the styling sheets, the fonts that you might be using on your web page, and even the JavaScript that you might be using. Now, the head tag also has the title element, which specifies the title for the document and can be seen as a text on the tab that you open on a browser. Now, next comes the body tag, which mostly contains the content that is visible to the viewer of your page. And these contains elements like h1 tags or paragraph tags, which are known by p tags, and they make up the mass of your content. Now, to create an HTML page, there are a few steps. So firstly, you need to open any sort of text editor. It could be Notepad++, Notepad, Sublime Text, or even Visual Studio Code. You have the freedom to use whatever text editor you want. Next, you have to write up some HTML code that you want to show on your web page, and then you just save your file as a .html. And to open the file, all you have to do is just view it on your browser. Now let me just give you a quick demonstration on how that is actually done if you've still not understood that. So let us create a folder first. So let's call this folder HTML demo, and now we're just gonna use Sublime Text because that's my favorite text editor. Out here, all you have to do is create a new file, and I'm going to be saying that it's a HTML type. Then you just fit in your HTML boilerplate. I'm going to tell my title is going to be my first web page, and that is the title of our web page. Now let's put in some content into this. So it's going to have an h1 which says this is just some text. Let's save this. This is going to be saved into our HTML demo. So let's open it. Let's save it as index.html. Now once you've saved it, all you have to do to view it is go into your folder and just open it on your browser. So as you guys can see, the title is written out here on the tab, and this is our h1 that we just created. Okay, so that's how you basically create an HTML page. So let's move on. Now there are some elements that I want to tell you all about, which is very important. So first is the doc type element. So the doc type declaration represents that the file you're working is a document type and helps the browser to display web pages correctly. And it only appears once at the top of the page before any HTML tag, and the doc type declaration is not case sensitive. Okay, so this is what HTML actually looks like. Now before we move further with some HTML coding, I want to make you all aware that a web page is fundamentally made up of three constituents. The first is HTML, the second is CSS or cascading style sheets, and the third is JavaScript. Now HTML will only give the structure of the web page. It has nothing to do with the styling, while CSS is completely responsible for how beautiful your web page looks, what colors you're using as the background, how your images are actually lined up, and all those sorts of things. To learn more about CSS, you can always refer to our CSS tutorial on the same page of Edureka. And thirdly, JavaScript is for making your page much more dynamic. If you're clicking on a button, your posts are being actually submitted. That's all being done by JavaScript. And if you all want to learn about JavaScript, we also have tutorials for that, and you can surely check them out. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create some elements and see how they look like on an HTML page. So let's go back to our HTML page. So this is what an H1 looks like. So let me just copy this down now. And let me show you all the types of headings that HTML provides us. It's actually H1 through H6, so H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. Let's also change them here. H6, H5, H4, H3, 2. Now let's save it. Let's go ahead and reload our page. So this is how the different types of headings look like. This is H1 being the biggest and H6 being the smallest. Okay, so that was about headings. Now we have some other tags also that I want to make you all aware of. So there's a P tag first. So P normally stands for paragraph. Now paragraph is basically what it looks like, and it normally contains random text or paragraphs of your web page. And this is what they look like. So this is what a paragraph looks like. Okay, so that was all about adding a paragraph. So how do you add images? So you can simply add image with the image tag, and all you have to say is a source. Now I already have a beautiful picture of a Pokemon that I really loved as a kid. So let me just copy that down into the folder. Okay, so now that we've copied down our image into our folder, all you have to do is give the source. Now this can be ninetales.png. That's the name of our image. Let's go back to our page. Let's reload it. Okay. Now you can also put in attributes like height, and you could say the height is going to be 7 or 500 pixels, and then you can also put in an attribute called width and say that's also going to be 500 pixels. Yeah, so that changes the height and width of your image. You can also make it smaller by saying something like 100 pixels. So let me just show you that. Save it, let's reload it, and yeah, now we have a much smaller Ninetales out there. Now suppose you don't have a picture, you can also put an alt tag. So this will say there was supposed to be an image here. So let's save that. Now you will not be able to see the alt tag because our image is working, but suppose I misspelled the name of my image, and now you'll see something like that out there. So there was supposed to be an image out here, so it's showing the alternate thing. Right, we can also have line breaks in our HTML. So you do that simply by saying /br, and then there will be a line break between this word 𝐓𝐫𝐞 and 𝐓𝐵𝐿aborus. So let's save that. Let's cancel this out. Okay, so now 𝐓𝐫𝐞 and 𝐓𝐵𝐿aborus are on different lines. We can also make stuff bold. So suppose you want to make this first word bold, so you can go B/B, and that'll make it bold. Yep, now lorem is bold. You can also, for making things bold, you can use the strong tag, and now let's say this is also bold, and now this is also bold, comes up right there. Then you can change the size of text. So let's just create some other text so that it doesn't get cluttered up. So we have tags like big, and we also have tags like small. So let me just show you the difference. This text is big, while this is small. Let's do that. So this text is big while this is small. So let me just put a line break here. Save that. Let's also put a line break here, and now let's put back our image. Yeah, this text is big while this is small. Now you can also put in horizontal lines inside your HTML. All you have to say is HR, and that'll put in horizontal line out there, right like that. You can also put the width and height out here. So width, there's no reason to put a height because it's not there, and width is going to be something like 70%. You could say 70%, and you have a line that goes 70% through the screen. Next, we can also put in links into our HTML. So suppose you want to go to a site. So let's say you want to go to Edureka. Now we can put some text like, say, this is a link to a website. Let's save that. Let's put it here. And now this will take us to edureka.co. Yep, so that's how it works. You can also put links on images. So suppose we were to remove this text out here, copy this image from here, and just put it out here. Now if we were to click on the image, it'll take us to edureka.co. Okay. You can also add lists into your HTML page. So there are two types of lists. One is an ordered list. So ordered lists are numbered lists, and you can put in list items like this. So let's put in a bunch of list items. Okay, so let's type in some text. So this is a random list. So list items are actually going to be the things that you're going to list out. So these could be anything that you're listing out. You could list out your favorite dogs, you could list out your favorite chocolates, or anything like that. Let me just show you what that looks like. And this is what it looks like. So as you guys can see, we have a list out here which says this is a random list, this is a random list, and just to make it a little more creative, let's go and put in some stuff like that. So firstly, let's put an H2 out here. These are some of my favorite dogs. Let's say I love Samoyeds. I also love Corgis. I love Huskies. And I also love Golden Retrievers. So now we'll have an actually good list out here. So these are some of my favorite dogs. Now if I were to just make this an unordered list, so we could also have unordered lists. So this is how you create an unordered list. You just go UL and then you put in your list items. So I'm going to say, so let's put in H2 again, and these are some of my favorite heroes in Dota 2. So list item, this is going to be, let's see, I really love playing Shadow Fiend. Then let's put in some other heroes like Storm Spirit, Invoker, and let's say Templar Assassin. Let's save that and let's see. So these are some of my favorite heroes in Dota 2. Now if you see, our H2 is kind of indented. That is because we have put it inside our list. Now if you were to just cut it out and put it outside, let's reindent my lines and let's see. So now it's properly showing. So these are some of my favorite heroes in Dota 2. You can also put in images in these list items. So suppose we were to put in some images of Shadow Fiend, Storm Spirit, you would just put an image out here and you would put the source. Now I don't really have images, but you can also put in the URL of images. So let me just show you how to do that. So let's see, Shadow Fiend. Let's go into the images. Let's find something small, like let's say 300 x 300. Okay, so this looks like a nice cartoonish figure. So you open this image in a new tab and we copy down this link. So you can say the source is this link. Let's save it. Let's see if it shows up. Yep, and now this thing shows up just outside Shadow Fiend. You can also put in some styling or some attributes, like you'd say width is going to be 100 pixels and height is going to be 100 pixels. So let's save that now. And now it's a much smaller image of Shadow Fiend. Now we have other types of tags also. So these are called div tags. So div tag stands for division. So to divide your page into separate parts, you could say this will contain the footer. So footer tags are normally coming in the end. Now you could also have a div tag in the beginning, and this could contain the header. So these tags will contain the header. This is, so let me just put in some header. So this is the header and this is the footer. So this is the header. Headers always come on top, and this is the footer. Now you can also create forms using HTML. So let's go ahead and create one. So our form is going to be called a registration form. Okay, so now let's put our form in a div first of all. So let's give our div an ID. So IDs and classes are actually used to select stuff on an HTML page when you're styling. So to understand more about IDs, check out our CSS tutorial. So let's give this ID form, or registration form rather. Then let's go into our div and create a form. Our form will always stay inside our form tags. Now that we have done that, let's understand the elements of a form. Firstly, we need an input. So first input will be of type text. Let's say its name is going to be first name, and we'll have a placeholder that sounds like this, say aria, and we will always be requiring it. So if you say required, that means somebody will, if he's actually inputting stuff into the form, this is a mandatory field. Okay, so let's save that and see. So now we have a registration form called aria. Okay, so we also need labels, so let's go ahead and create one. So label, so for first name, and this is going to say first name, and it's going to have a colon. So now there's a label called first name. Now we can do this for last name also. So let's Control C, Control V. So it's going to be last, this is going to be last, and this is also going to be last, and we want to put a placeholder for Paul, and this is also a required field. So now we have a last name with this placeholder. We can submit stuff into that. Now form also takes in two important attributes I forgot to mention. So one is the action and the other is the method. Now action is something that will happen when you submit this form, so you can run a script, something like script.php, but for now that's for another session. Okay, now there are other types of inputs, so let's see, let's create another div. Now suppose you want to input the gender also. So let's see, let's first create a label, and let's also create an input type. So input will be type of radio, and this is going to be called gender male, and let's also give us a value of choice 1. Save it. Now you want to label and you want to give it the attribute for, and you want to give it the name out here. So let's put in that. So gender male, save that, and let's write male out here. So let's save that now and let's see what it looks like. So now we have this thing called male. We can check it and we can uncheck it. Now let's create for female also and others. So let's see, let's call this female, and this is going to be of type choice 2. Now we have male, we have female, but if you see, we can actually select both of them or all of them, so that's not something we want, right? So let's make this choice 3, let's make this other. Okay, now we have a gender submission going on, so male or it's female or it's other. Now we can't really select everything, so how do we actually solve that? So let's give them all the same name. So we can call it gender choice, save it. Now you either go male or you go female or you go other. You can't really select the same thing. So that's how you make that happen. Okay, now let's look into some other types of input types we can take in. So let's create another div. Suppose you want to take in the email address. So let's go ahead and copy that. Let's put it out here. Let's say, so label for, let's see, first of all we need to change this type to email, and we will also give this a name of email. Let's put in a placeholder instead of a value, and it's going to be something like, let's put xyz@email.com. Okay, now we have this thing going on, so let's change this label to email, and let's change this label to email too. Now we have this thing going and we can type in our email, and we'll also need to type in a password for registrations. Let's call this password. Let's also make this password. The type is going to be password, and let's remove a placeholder because passwords don't really have placeholders. Save that, and now you see when you type in a password you can't really see anything. That's how you make a form that inputs a password. Okay, so that was how you take in emails and passwords in a form. Now there are some other stuff that I want to show you, so let's dive right into that. So let's create another div. Okay, so first of all we need a select tag. So select tags are used for making selections. So let me show you how that works. So firstly, let's give this a name, and let's call this birthday, or let's call this the month. Now we'll also need a label for this. Let's create a label. So our label is for month, Let's call it birthday. Now our select can have various options, so you're basically going to put in a bunch of options out here. Let's see, option. Now we need 12 options actually. That's 3, that's 6, that's 9, that's 12. Delete these out. Just read in my lines. Now our options are gonna have values. So our value will be something like, fine, so let's say Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. And you could say January out here, February. Let me just create this quickly. March. Let's save this. Now let's see what this looks like. So we have this birthday thing, and it has all the months in there. Okay, now out here, if you see, it already comes with the default value of January. Now you can also mitigate that by putting in another option called default. So let's put another option, or so now that we have an option, let's give this a value 0, and let's say selected, disabled. Now if you reload this, there's nothing, but you get all these different values. Now instead of just making it blank, you could say that this could say month. So now this says month, and you could create something similar for days also. So for days you need to create 30 of these, and I hope you get the logic of creating this thing. Now our form also needs a button to submit, so let's go and create that. Also, let me show you another type of input. So let's say input, and the type will be check box, and the name will be agree. And let's put a label for this, a for agree, and I agree to all the conditions of the form. Now we will have this thing going, and we have a checkbox. We could check it, we could uncheck it, something like that. Then all we need is an input. Not an input, we rather need a button. Say button, and you say submit, and you also have to give this a type. So this is going to be of type submit. So once that's done, we see this button and we can submit it. So if you go and submit, you'll see please fill out this field because it's a required field. And that's all that is there, the forms. So that's how you create a form in HTML. You can also create tables in HTML, so let me show you how to do that. Let's reload and make this blank, save it. Yeah, so our tables are created with table tags. Your table, and tables have table datas. Okay, so we can also create tables in HTML. For that we need table tag. Now table comes with the table header first of all. So this will contain all your table headers. So suppose you were creating a table for dogs and the breed. So th dog, and you can say the dog also has a name and breed. So this has created a table header now. So let me just show you what that looks like. So now we have the dog name and breed. Now we can just simply go in and put in some table rows. So for in a row you say tr, and in every row you will have to put in some table data. So for that you use the table data tag, so td. So let's say our dog is called, so let's make this rather dog owner name, right? So I had a dog and my dog's name was Stoner. Let's call him Stoner. And Stoner was a street dog, so let's just keep the breed as street. Okay, so that was one table data row. Save it. Now we'll be needing multiple table rows, so let's just copy that, paste it multiple times. So let's say my friend Shubham, he has a dog called Goldie and it's a retriever. And then I also have this friend called Ayushman. He has a dog called Duke and it's husky. And then there's this guy called Ishan. He has a dog called monster, but it's a pug. Yeah, so now we have successfully created a table, and you guys can see dog owners are Arya, Shubham, Ayushman, and Ishan. Their name of their respective dogs are Stoner, Goldie, Duke, and Monster, and the breeds are Street, Retriever, Husky, and Pug. So that's how you create a table. Now with CSS you can add a border to this table. So let me just show you how that's done with a little bit of CSS. So let's say style, let's say text/CSS. Now out here you could just do some little styling. Let's give our table a border of 1px solid black. Now our table will have a border, and we can also give TDs a border, and they're gonna have 1px solid black too. So now everything has a border and our table looks much neater. Yep, so that's how you create a table in HTML. Okay guys, so now it's time I actually show you how HTML can be really polished sometimes. So let's go ahead and create a blog. So for this blog I've already created the CSS out here, so I'm not really going to be explaining the styling part, but we are going to be creating our blog. So let's go ahead and see how that looks like. So first of all, let's delete everything. Let's create a page now. So let's call this blog. Now we'll be linking our style sheet out here. So for linking our style sheet, all you have to say is something like this, and then we go ahead and copy my style sheets. The desktop, we're doing our stuff in HTML demo. Let's copy this here. Right. Now our blog.css is going to be here. Now let's go and start creating our blog. So firstly, let's put everything inside a div. Now this is going to have a class called post, because I've used the class to actually style some stuff. Now that's done, so let's have another div. So this is going to have a class called date, and we're going to be putting in the date. So let's say our date is going to be October 24th 2018. Now let's say we have a heading, so let's say Vancouver, my favorite city. Then let's put in some paragraphs, because every article needs a paragraph. So for paragraphs you're just going to be filling it with some lorem ipsum. Now our paragraph will have a class called quote. Okay, now let's reload and see what is being made. Okay, so if you guys can see, our blog post is coming up. Now we can also add some images to our blog post. So let's add a link first. So we link to https www.edureka.co. Now we are going to use an image for actually making it clickable. So we already have an image. It's called image1.jpg. So that's there. Let's also put an alt tag out here just in case this doesn't load up. So alt and say Vancouver image. Now let's put in another paragraphs. So another lorem ipsum and some more paragraphs, I guess, because this is a blog, so let's make it look like a blog. Save that, and let's also give it a horizontal line to make it look neat. Save this. Let's load it. Okay, so we have this nice looking article and it has this image. If we click on this image, it'll take us to Edureka's site. So we go to Edureka if we click that image. Let's add another article into this just to make it a little longer. So let's copy down this div. So let's change the date first, because let's say we posted on the next day. Let's change the title, so my second blog post. Save it. Let's remove the image from this one to make it a little different. Yeah. So now if you see, we have this nice looking blog post going on. It has this horizontal line. We have some quote out here, and that's how you can do stuff with HTML.
I have another question for you guys. Which HTML tag is used to define a table header? And the options are option A table, option B th, option C tr, and option D td. If you know the correct answer, please leave it in the comment section below. In our previous module, we covered the fundamentals of HTML, including tags, elements, and basic structure. Now we'll focus on implementing HTML specifically in the context of blogs. You learn how to structure blog posts, integrate multimedia elements, and optimize for readability and accessibility.
Let me just show you the HTML structure of our blog. This will give you the idea of actual implementation of HTML in industries to create a web page. Well, we at Edureka, we use web page to write our blogs. WordPress is an open source software that you can use to create a beautiful website or blog. Currently, it is used by more than 60 million websites, including 30.6% of the top 10 million websites as of April 2018. Let me just show you how we guys at Edureka create our blog. /blog/admin. Let's add a new post. Let's add any name like HTML basic. And inside that, let me just write few lines like, this is my first blog. Let's define a headline like, what is HTML? Let's change it to heading 1. All right. So as you can see here, we have heading 1, heading 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So next part would be to define the paragraph. So what is HTML? HTML is a hypertext markup language that is used to create a web page or a website. Okay, done? Fine. Let me show you how this looks like. Let's save it. And let's preview the basic blog that we have just created. So this is how your blog would look like. Like this was my headline, what is HTML? And under that, I defined that HTML is a hypertext markup language that is used to create a web page or a website. All right. So what if I want to make this HTML as bold? So let's add a tag over here, strong tag, strong HTML. That's it, not the entire sentence. So strong. So strong and /strong. So now what do you think? What would be the bold part? Let's save it. Any guess, anyone? You know what? You'll be getting the entire statement as the bold. This was the original, right? So can you see this entire statement is changed to bold? And why? Because you mentioned strong at the starting and the end. So whatever would come under the start and close tag would be treated as bold. So what if I just want to make HTML bold? So what I'll do, I'll just define a closing tag after HTML. Okay, and I'll remove this closing tag from here and let's save it. So currently you can see that HTML is a hypertext markup language. This entire line is bold. Let me just refresh it and show you what are the changes which we got. So yeah, so now you can see that only this HTML is bold. Rest other are normal text, right? So this was just one of the way of adding elements in our blog. All right. And now let's just move ahead and end our session with some of the FAQs and doubt which I have come across from different learners. So the first one is creating my web page going to take long? Well, remember the first HTML code that we wrote in our Notepad++ and open in our default browser? Well, that was also an example of a web page. It hardly took me a minute, right? So yeah, how long will it take to create a web page depends on what you want from your web page. Learning HTML will only take few days of reading and learning the code for what you want. Don't worry about the basics. In my next video, I'll teach you about it. And I'm sure if you'll practice it along, you'll surely learn it within an hour or two. So once you're done with the basics and you have a proper idea of the tags, you can easily start showcasing your creativity and creating HTML pages. All right, fine. So coming to the next question, do I have to be online at all the time while developing my web page? No, not at all. You can code your entire website offline by storing it all on your computer. And later then when you get your system connected to the internet, just transfer all this file to the web. Later in future, whenever you have new content, just add that to the existing online version of your site. It's really quite simple, right? Fine. Coming to the next question, is it possible to create a website without HTML? Well, the answer is yes as well as no, depending on what you mean by developing without HTML or CSS. If you mean that you don't have any notation of HTML and CSS, so therefore you don't know how to code a website. Well, if this was your question, then don't worry about that. There are plenty of services that allows you to build a website without any knowledge of HTML or CSS, like Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, and many more. But if you mean that ultimately you want a website that is not written in HTML and CSS, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are the only language that a browser can use to render a website. You can develop a website in Python, PHP, or any other language, but ultimately, what those languages do is to create HTML and CSS. All right. You won't find any traces of those language in your final page. Well, JavaScript is a bit different because it can be used inside the page to trigger and play dynamics action like sending the data from a form, error or confirmation messages, images or content sliders, or any other dynamic interaction. So concluding this, I'll tell that your entire web page would consist of HTML as the main code and you can't do without it. Alright? You can use CSS to express the style of the elements on the page like color, shapes, shadows, transition, transparency, responsiveness, etc. And finally, JavaScript if you need any server communication and dynamic content. Is it clear now? Okay.
I have another question for you guys, and the question is, which HTML tag is commonly used to create a hyperlink in the blog post? And the options are option A, option B, image, option C, P, option D, div. If you know the correct answer, please leave it in the comment section below. We explored the basics of HTML and CSS, understanding how they work together to style and structure web pages. Next, we'll combine these skills to create a complete website. You'll discover how to design layouts, customize styles, and ensure your site is responsive.
For working on HTML, we can use any code editors if we want. So depending upon the requirement, we can use any code editor as part of the setup. For example, if we are comfortable with Notepad, then we can use Notepad editor. If we are comfortable working on, suppose if we are comfortable working on Sublime Text, we can use Sublime Text as our main code editor. So we can choose the code editors which suits our requirement, whichever we are comfortable with, and then we can use it for getting started. So if we are comfortable working on Notepad++, so here we can download Notepad++. So Notepad is only available for Windows, it is not available for Mac OS. So if you're comfortable with this editor, for example, we have Notepad++. So we have this platform. So basically in here we can get started. So why we use a code editor for writing code? If we want, we can create the entire HTML page in a simple Notepad. We don't need to have any code editors in mind. But if we are starting to write in Notepad itself, then we won't be getting any kind of recommendations. There won't be any autofills. There won't be any errors being highlighted in case there are some in the entire code. So instead of using the normal HTML note, or we can say normal Notepad, it's better to use the code editors like we have Notepad++. So if you're comfortable with this one, then here we can start using this platform. Or if we are comfortable with some other platforms, like we have Visual Studio Code, we have Sublime Text, we can use any of the code editors to start coding on HTML. If you are comfortable, if you want to work on Visual Studio Code, so you can work on Visual Studio Code as well. So now Notepad++ is free. Visual Studio Code is also for free platform. There is no requirement here. So here we can copy this. And if we are comfortable with Sublime Text, and we also have another editor by the name of Sublime Text, we can copy this. So you can also refer to this Sublime Text, which is also a free platform that we can use for getting started. So depending upon your comfort level, you can choose the platform that you feel comfortable on, and then we can get started. So let's say we want to work on Sublime Text. Now, Visual Studio Code and Sublime Text, they both are available for Windows and as well as Linux environment as well. So let's say if you want to start working on Sublime Text, then here, first of all, every HTML element, they all need to be saved in .html or .htm format. So just like every Word document needs to be in .docx, every Excel file need to be in .xls, every PowerPoint file needs to be in .ppd format, correct? Same way, every HTML file needs to be in .html format. So first of all, we have to save this file in this format. So for saving it, we can simply press Ctrl S and we can save it. Let's say here we define its name as, suppose, home.html. Or let's do one thing. Let's create a folder here on our desktop. Let's create a folder. Let's name it as HTML for Edureka. And within this folder, let's name it the file as home.html. So home.html is going to be treated like a simple HTML file, right? So here we can save it as home.html and now click on save. Now this file has been saved as home.html. So now this is going to be treated like a HTML document by Sublime Text. Because using Sublime Text, we can work on different file types. We can work on PHP, we can work on CSS, we can work on JS file, we can work on XML. So depending upon the format, these core editors, they give us recommendation, they scan through and they scan for any errors accordingly. So once now we have specified the format here, now we can get started designing the entire HTML document. Now we can start with defining a simple plain HTML tag. So here we can define HTML. Now, first of all, the first section is the head section. So head is where we define whatever content we need to display in the title bar. For example, when we open up any page, we can see we have the title for a given web page as webinars, details on our upcoming webinars. We have web development certification. This is what our title is. We have download hyphen Sublime Text. This is what our title is. So these again title are meant to be displayed, are meant to be mentioned in the head section of the website. Let's say if we are going to integrate, we want to link some external style sheets that we are going to work on, then we have to also link those style sheets as a part of the head tags. So in head, we can specify multiple other elements. Now, in every tag inside angular brackets, you can see we have to first of all open up angular bracket, then we have to close all the other tags. So 80% of, not 80%, 90% of the tags that we have here in HTML, they both need to close. They both need to be closed as well. For example, suppose here we want to place a title. Let's say here we define title as welcome to, or we can say homepage, or suppose let's say Edureka. And now once we are done defining title, that means now there is no more use of this title tag. We have now whatever content we want to display in the tab section, we have defined it as a part of title of any given page. Now once we are done, we have to close the title tag as well. So whatever tag we open in HTML, we also have to close those tags. And for closing a tag, we have to use a simple / and then the name of the tag that we have opened. Because if we don't close this tag here, that means whatever we are going to place here, that is going to be considered as a part of title, which we don't want. So here we can close title. Now, let's say if we don't want to place anything else in the head section, so now we have to close the head tag as well by using the same concept, a / along with the name of the element that we have opened. Now we have to start defining for body. So here we can define body. So whatever content we see on the website, whatever content we are seeing here, starting from menu to the entire content on the web page, these all content has to be placed. All the content have to be placed inside. The entire content has to be placed inside the body tag itself. So here we can open a body. Now whatever content we need to place here, we have to place within this body tag itself. For example, here we have closed body, right? So whatever content that needs to be placed here, that has to be placed within this body tag. So now we can use multiple elements, whatever needs to be displayed, we can place it here in the body tag itself. All right. So first of all, let's say now in body tag, we have, now let's say we want to place everything in the center. So we have a tag by the name of center defined. All right. So here we have to place everything in center, right? So here we can define center tag, and then we can place any element we want. For example, let's say here we want to place a simple H1. Now we have multiple types of headers available that we can go for. Headers as in the headline. Now we know that whenever we are talking about any website, we have a main headline, then we have multiple sub headlines depending upon the topics that we have. For example, here the main headline is suppose download, and within download we have multiple sub headlines, like we have changelog. We have again in changelog we have multiple again sub headlines here. We have 3.2, 3.21. Again, these all topics are under changelog, correct? Again, we have a main subheading as in editorial, text rendering. These are what? These are these subheadlines. So depending upon the content type, how exactly we have structured them, we can define the tag, we can define the headers accordingly. All right. So for placing the headlines here, so here we can go back to our editor, and here we can define H1. Let's suppose here we define as welcome to Edureka, as this one should be the main heading that needs to be displayed. Now, once as we discussed, every tag needs to be open and closed as well, correct? Every tag needs to be closed and needs to be open and closed as well. So here we can define the tag here. And then let's say suppose if you don't want to place anything else here, we can close the center tag, and then we can close body, we can close HTML, because at the end we have to close all the other elements one by one. All right. So let's say once we are done, we can save the file. And now if we try to open the same file in the browser, so we can open up the location where we have saved this. So we have saved this on desktop. So on desktop, we can open up our HTML Edureka folder, and here we can open up this file. So as you can see here, this is containing the same title that we defined here as homepage Edureka, what we had done here, homepage for Edureka, and this is containing the same HTML element as in the first, the main header that we have specified as welcome to Edureka. And since we have chosen the center tag, so that's why it is being placed as center. If you don't use a center tag, if we save it, we come back, we hit refresh, we can see by default the text is going to be aligned towards the left. And if we want this one to be placed towards the center, then we can use center tag for it. Let's say when we are talking about any HTML document or any document, we have a main heading. For example, let's say we are writing a blog article about the type of shoes, right? So the type of shoes is going to be, now this page is all about type of shoes, right? So now the type of shoes is going to be the main heading of the page, correct? Right, so this is the main heading. So we are going to make sure that this heading is having the biggest font. They can say is having a large font, and plus this is also having a good amount of weightage to it as well, right? So we can place them in the H1 tag, being the main headline of the entire web page. Now let's suppose here we are segregating the entire type of shoes in two different categories. We have one for suppose men's shoes for men, and then we had defined shoes for women. Now these two are at another level, right? So now these are like the subheading of this main heading. So we can place them under the H2 element. Now they both are at the same level. So we are going to place them under the H2 tag, right? Let's say now we are going to write about men. Now again in men, we have again segregated the shoes for men in two different categories. We have one for formal and then we have one for casual. Again, this is at the third level, correct? So here we can make use of the H3 tag for these. Same way, if we define again, we have again categorized women into two different categories here. Suppose we also have formal and casual here, or we may have some different categories. So we can again define the H3 element for that, because they all are the same level. So we can define them as the H3 element. Again, if we segregate them further, then we can make use of the H4 elements and so on. So basically, this is going to be used for defining the hierarchy of the content based on their levels. All right. So now let's say we want to place some more elements. For example, let's say here we want to place a simple heading as a subheading as an H2. So here we can define as in we are learning HTML. So here we can close H2. We can save it. And now suppose if we come back, we can hit refresh. We can see now we have the main heading. This one is H2. Same way, if we define H3, again, it is going to have a smaller font and less weight as compared to H1 and H2. For example, here we define date as in December 1, 2020. If we save it, we can come back. We can see here. So as we proceed further, again, the size of the font is going to be reduced. Now, although we can customize the font size at any point of time we want. But again, that's how different structures are defined here. All right. So now, let's say if we want to place an image, now we have placed the text content as in different headers. Now, let's say if you are looking to place some image elements. So for doing that, we can use a tag called as, let's say here we want to place a separator. So we can use HR. So HR is basically used for horizontal line. So using HR, we place horizontal line from one end to the other in the web page. So if we save it, if we come back, we can see using HR, a horizontal line has been placed from one end to the other. And we don't need to close HR. There are some selective tags which do not need to be closed. So these are considered to be open tags. these are considered to be open tags here. So here we can see, okay, what all elements we have closed and what elements we haven't closed here. So you can see we have HR. So, and then now let's say here we want to place an image. So here we can define image. Now for placing the image here, we have to use a tag called as image. So an image is also an open tag. So here we can define image, and then now image is also an open tag. We don't need to close the image, but if you want to define an image here, then we also have to define the image source. So basically here we use source as an attribute. So whatever property we define for any tag, that is called as an attribute. So source is what? Source is an attribute for this tag called as image. So we have to define where exactly the image is stored. Now the source can be any external link. For example, we have image available in some other website, or we want to specify the link of that image, then we can specify the link here as well. So for example, let's say we want to place any image here. Let's say here we want to place this kind of image here. So let's say now this is an image not stored locally. This is a simple. If we open this up in new tab, we can see this image is currently present on wallpaperaccess.com full, and this is the exact path of the image, correct? So let's say if we want to place this image on our own website, so either we can, now we have two ways of doing that. Either we can copy the link reference here, and then in the image source, we can define the link. That means where exactly the image is currently located. So if we save it, we come back, we hit refresh, we can see now the image is getting displayed on the entire web page as well. But again, we can see the entire image, that means the full size image has been displayed here, correct? So now if we want to define the size of this image, for example, we want to limit the size of the image. So here we can define width as an attribute here. And let's say here we want to limit the size to, let's say 500 pixels. So here we can define 500. If we save it, we can come back. Now you can see here the entire image has been limited to 500 pixels only. Or let's say if we want to make it dynamic, that means now if we define the image to be 500 pixels, that means if we shrink the entire size of the container, the image is not going to get adjusted accordingly, because at the end it is going to maintain a size of 500, we can say 500 pixels, and that's how it is not going to get adjusted accordingly, correct? So here we have to ensure, now if we want to make sure that again the image gets adjusted automatically, so for that we have to define the width in terms of percentage. So here we can define in terms of percentage. Let's say we want that this image should be taking, let's say 70% of the canvas at every time. So here we can define 70, or let's say we even keep it to 80 as well. We can save it. And now if we come back, we hit refresh, we can see now this image is going to occupy 70-80% of the entire container at any time. So let's say even if we shrink the image in the container here, we can see the image is getting adjusted accordingly. A simple example for this sponsor design. So this is going to make sure that whatever the size of the container is, the browser is, the image is going to contain, or we can say occupy 80% of the available size at any point of time as a part of defining the width in terms of percentage. We can see here. Let's say we want this to be occupying the 70%. We can define this, save it. If we hit refresh, we can see now this is going to occupy 70% of the available container at any point of time. If you want to keep it as suppose 60 as well, we can keep it 60. You can see this is going to occupy this much of space at any point of time. And now, first of all, this is how we can place the image through any of the remote locations, as in we can place the links for these images directly. Or let's say if we want to place an image which has been stored locally. For example, we have an image stored in a folder here as well itself. So let's say if we download this image, again, not sure about the copyright here, but again, let's say just as a reference, let's say if we have this image downloaded and that too in the same folder. So our HTML file is also available in this folder by the name of HTML Edureka. So let's save the image here itself. So here we can save the image here. Just name it as suppose background.jpg. Now this image has been saved. Now let's say if we want to refer to the local file here, then instead of this link here, we can specify the path. So this image is currently available in the same folder as background.jpg, right? So if we save it, we come back, we again hit refresh, we can see the same image is now being opened up again, because right now we are referring this image from the local directory here. Suppose, let's say, if we have saved the image within again a subfolder, for example, we have a subfolder. Now this folder is available in the same directory where we have the home page, correct? So now let's say if we move background.jpg to the subfolder, if we save now if we go back, we hit refresh, now the image is not going to be displayed. Why? Because the image path has changed. Now image is no longer available in the same directory as this HTML file, correct? And that's why we have to make sure that we do update this. And then once we get again, now if we want to refer, if we want to correct the entire path here, then we have to go back to our directory, and that's how we have to update it there. So we can go back, and here we can define images. So we have the image saved under images folder, right? So now we can save it. Now if we come back, we can hit refresh. Now as you can see, the image has been restored because now we have corrected the entire path of the image that is going to be placed here. All right, and next, let's say if you want to place a hyperlink on the same image, on the same page. So let's say after this, we again want to place a simple separator here. And let's say here we want to place some kind of hyperlinks here. We can save it. Okay, now let's say here we want to place some hyperlinks just after December 31st. December 1st. So let's say here we want to place another element. Now, if we are placing any element and we want that element to be placed in a separate line, because H1, H2, H3, they are automatically placed in separate line. They are not going to be placed one after the other in the same horizontal line. So these elements are designed to be placed on a separate line altogether. But right now, let's suppose if we want to place a button, so here we can use button. And let's say here we want to name the button as get started. And to close the button, we can find close tag as well. We can save it. If we come back, we hit refresh, we can see the element has in place here as get started. Now, let's say if we may have a text component as well, or we may have a website, or we may have placed a simple paragraph where we have placed the element as visit Edureka's website. Okay, suppose here we may have as in get more, or let's keep it the same. Let's save it. We can come back. Here we have placed a small paragraph. Now we want that if someone clicks on this link, now this entire phrase should be clickable. That means anyone should be able to click on this text and they should be able to go directly to any other page that we may have defined. So for example, let's say we want to link this text to Edureka's website. So first of all, we do need to have the website link. So let's say here we want them to be linked to suppose edureka.co. So here we have the link of the website. So for linking any text or any image or any element in HTML, we use a tag called as anchor tag. So we can go back. So we have to use a tag called as anchor tag. Now we want to link this paragraph, correct? We want to link this paragraph. So just before this paragraph here, we have to add a tag called as anchor tag. So here we can define anchor tag, and then we also have to close the anchor tag as well. So as you can see here, we have to close the anchor tag. So just to avoid confusion, here we can define anchor, and here we can close anchor here itself. Now anchor tag is going to be used for linking any or for converting any text into the hyperlink text, so that they can go to the page that we intend them to. So if we save it, we can come back, we can see still nothing has been defined here because anchor tag needs an attribute. Just like we have to specify source for the image, same way for anchor we have to define another attribute called as ℏreference. In ℏreference we have to specify the path. That means whichever page we want to link here, we have to define it as a part of ℏreference. So let's say here we want that if someone clicks on this phrase, then they should be going to edureka.co website. So we have defined that as a part of ℏreference in the same anchor tag. If we save it, we can come back, hit refresh, we can see now this link has been added here. So if someone clicks on this link here, they are going to go to the website, whichever domain, wherever we want to take them. All right, and suppose let's say same way if you want to link this button as well, so same process. Suppose here instead of this paragraph we want to link this button, so here we can use anchor tag before the button itself, and then we can close the anchor tag afterwards. So if we save it, we come back, we hit refresh, we can see now the hyperlink has been removed from Edureka's website and has been placed on the get started. So if we click on get started, I can see here this is going to take us to this hyperlink text. Same way if you want to link this image, again we can suppose say here we can copy this, we can use this within the image itself, so the image is also going to get hyperlinked. If you save it, we come back, we hit refresh. Now you can see here earlier the image was not hyperlinked, right? So now even if we click on this image, we will be taken to that particular page as a part of hyperlink structure. So let's say if you don't want to link the image, then we can remove the image here. We can set this back to the same property that we defined only for the text component for now. Now, let's say here we want to change the styling for any component here, then we can make use of CSS. So CSS stands for cascading style sheet. So HTML is going to be used for defining all the elements, and CSS is used for beautifying the elements based on if we want to apply any kind of styling components there, then we have to do that by using CSS. So even before we discuss that, let's say here we want to place multiple other elements. For example, let's say here in this website we want to place some kind of input box. So the users, they should be able to enter the name and email, and then they should be able to click on get started. So for placing that kind of form elements, we can make use of a form tag available in HTML. Let's say now before we discuss on CSS, let's say here we want to place a simple input, we can say form here. So users should be able to fill it. We want the users to fill in their name and the email address, and then they should be clicking on submit, or we can say get started. So here we can do that by creating a form as well. So for example, let's say here we want to create a form section just after get started. Let's do one thing, let's remove this button here for now. And here we can create a simple HR again, a simple horizontal line. We can save it. Now we want to place some kind of forms here. So here we can make use of form. So let's say if you want to take input from the user, we can define form. And now let's say here we want to take the input in terms of form elements. So here we can define input. Now first of all, before we decide input here, let's say here we want to place a label. That means what exactly this input is going to be about. Suppose we want the user to enter their name, we can close label. And now we want to give them an input box. So here we can define input type as text. Now, when we say input type as text, that means we want to have a simple text box given to them, right? So here we can define input type text, and if we save it, let's say if we save it, we can come back, we can see a label here by the name of name, and then here we have input box where the users can start typing in, correct? Now, if we want to place some kind of placeholders here, that means some text should be displayed beforehand. So we can add another attribute as placeholder. So let's say here we want to add enter your name. We can save it. We can come back. Now we can see we also have a placeholder available here. So now if as soon as we start typing in, we can see the placeholder has been vanished. So let's say here we can give a label as here as well. For example, here that we want to call this form as suppose sign up, a simple H3 element, and here we want to call it as sign up. We can save it. So here we have a sign up form, and then we can define another. For example, suppose if we want to add another input box where the user should be able to log in. For example, instead of sign up, we want to create a simple login form here. So here we can define login, and we want the user to be able to enter their password as well, right? So what we can do, we can place another input box. So let's say if we want to place the input side by side, then here we can define another label. Suppose here we can define another label, and here we can define it as suppose password. We are going to ask the user for the password. We can close label, And then again, we can open up an input box here. Here we can define input, and suppose here we have to define type. Now we want them to enter password, and we know that whenever we start typing in a password, we don't see anything in the password field, right? Because it has been defined as a type password. So that as soon as user starts typing in, everything will be displayed as a simple asterisk value. So here we can also add a placeholder, enter your password. Now, if we save this, we can come back. We can see another field for password has also been added here. So the users, they can enter the name and the password. Now we can see that since we have declared this as a password type, so whatever we are typing it, we won't be able to see what exactly it is because it has been now declared as a password altogether. And now if you want to place a button for submitting, so here we can create a break. Now why we are using a break? So if you want to place certain elements towards the, we can say in the next line, then we can use a break tag. For example, let's say we want to place this password section in the next line. So here again, we can use break after this input box. So if we save it, we can see now this has been moved to the next line. If you want to move this to again next line, we can save it. And that's how we can move something to the next line by using the break tag. Let's say we want to place the login button in the next line. So for that, we have to place, suppose break tag here. We can add 2 breaks. And then here we can define, suppose again, here we can define input type as submit. Now, when we are creating a form here, instead of using the button, we can use input type submit. So submit ensures that whatever elements we define here, these are going to be submitted by using submit button here. All right. So button is used to place a separate button altogether that may not have anything to do with the form. And for the form, we generally use submit button here. And that's how we can create this element here. So now let's see how we can add styling to the HTML documents that we are going to create here. So let's say we want to change the color of the headers that you have placed. So they are now for adding the CSS, there are multiple ways of adding styling components here. So the first method is by using the inline style. So let's say we want to change the color only of this HTML element. So in here, just like we defined multiple attributes for these tags, same way we also have to define one attribute named as style. So under style, we can define style equals to sign and double quotes. And within here, we can define what kind of styling element we want to define here. So for example, we want to change the color. So we want to specify a red color for this element. So here we can define style attribute, and under style, we can define color to be red. If we save it, we can come back, we can hit refresh. Now we can see the first element has been changed to red color, as you can see here. The first element has been changed to red color. Same way, if you want to place the styling for other elements as well, we can use the same style attribute and then we can change the styling, both in terms of font size or the height, and or we want to change the font family, we want to change anything, we can do that by using the inline style. So we can use the same styling component, and let's say along with color, let's say we want to change the font family. So here we can define font family. Let's say we want to change this to Verdana. So here we can choose Verdana. And let's say if we save it, we can come back, we can see along with changing the color, we have also changed the font family. Same way, if you want to change the font size as well, we can again define font size. Let's say we want this to be for 64 pixel. We can define 64 pixel as font size. Now every size here in HTML, they are defined in pixels. So we can save it, we can come back, we can see the font size has also been increased. So this is one method of changing the style for any of the element by use, and this method, when we define style attribute in the element itself, this is called as inline style. This is called as inline style. Now this method is preferred when we only have one or two elements in which the styling needs to be applied here. But when we have multiple styling components that needs to be applicable for every element, then for that, instead of using inline style, we can place the style sheet in the head section itself. So here we can define style. Now why we are placing this in head section? Because this is something that is going to be applicable for the entire web page, correct? So here we can place a style in the style tag within the head tag itself. So just before closing the head tag, we can place style. And these were the attributes that we defined for style, correct? And before that, now, first of all, we have to define for which element the styling is going to be applied. We are going to apply the styling for H1 element, correct? So here we can define H1. And now for H1, we are going to define these styling components here. That means here we are going to define all the components for H1 itself. So basically here we can define how exactly we want to place all the elements. So we don't need to have style defined here. So we can remove this. Now for H1, we define color to be red, font family to be Verdana, font size to be 64. So these things are going to be applied here. So if we save it, we can come back. We can still see here the same elements have been applied to H1. Same way, if we want to add something for, let's say if we want to add something for H3. So here we can define H3. And let's say if for H3 we want to define a separate color. Let's say here for H3 we want to have a color defined as magenta. Now color can be in the name or colors can be in the hex code as well. So here we have a hex color code. So here we have HTML color codes. So we can either define the name, but again, we know there are millions of shades. And if you want to use a specific shade, then we have to specify the hex color code for it. Either we can define RGB value or the hex color value. For example, let's say here we want to make use of this shade, or suppose here we want to make use of this specific shade of color. Then we have to copy the hex value for it. And let's say here for H3 we want to make use of this specific color. So here we can define the hex code here. And then same way, suppose if we want, now we only want to apply the color code, so we can save it. If we come back, we hit refresh, we can see now the H3 has been changed to this color scheme, as you can see here. Now this is one method, so we can use the inner, and when we are using the style element within the main HTML document, then this is called as inline style. And if we are placing the styling components in the element itself, then this is called as inline style. And when we are placing the style sheet within the head section, then this is referred as internal style sheet. So this method is called as internal style sheet when you use style tag within a head tag. And when we are placing the styling within the element, then that is referred as inline style sheet. Now let's say when we have a large customization done, right? So there it won't make any sense to add all the styling components in the same HTML file. Let's say we only want to modify the styling components, so it won't make any sense to modify the main core HTML file, correct? So in that case, it's always a good practice, especially when we have large number of customization done. So we have a large code and we have a large code base, and we have multiple customization done. We have more than 100 classes defined for every element. Then we can make use of external style sheet. So when we say external style sheet, what exactly we mean? Let's say here we can copy, here we can cut this. We can remove the style tag here. If we save this, we can see all the styling has been gone, right? Now what we can do, we can create a new file. Let's save the file by the name of style.css. We can name the file as anything. We only need to make sure that the file is saved with the extension as .css. CSS stands for cascading style sheet. So here we can define the style sheet, and here we can place whatever we want to place as a part of styling components here. So for H1, we want to define a specific color. So here we can define H1, and then we can define properties for H1. We want to define properties for H3. We can define properties for H3 here. So once we are done, we can save it. And now we have to include the style sheet in our HTML document, so that whatever styling we have defined here, that can be applicable to the elements here, correct? So for that, we have to use a tag called as link tag within the head tag itself. So here we have to use link, and first of all, here we have to define link type. So this is going on. First of all, link relation. This is going to be a style sheet. Then we can define the type here. So this style sheet is going to be in text format, and that too with the extension as CSS. And then we can define href, just like we define the source of the file. So here we can define source of the file. Now, since the file is stored in the same folder as our index document, we can define the name as style.css. Let's say if we have saved this within a folder, suppose we can create a folder by the name of CSS. And suppose if style.css is available within the CSS, let's say if you click on save as, and let's say we save it in under CSS. So now suppose if the file is available within CSS, so here we can simply click on, here we can specify the location as CSS, and under CSS it is available in style.css. So now we can close it. Now if we save it, if we come back to the browser, we hit refresh, we can see the same styling properties which has been defined in a separate style sheet is now being linked to our document, and whatever we have defined here, this is going to be applicable here. So let's say if we change the value here, for example, we want to change this from red to blue. Awesome, we can save it, and if you come back, the same styling is going to be applied here as well.
Here's a simple question for you guys, and the question is, which HTML tag is used to link an external CSS file to an HTML document? And the options are option A, link, option B, style, option C, script, option D, meta. If you know the correct answer, please leave it in the comment section below. In our previous module, we learned to create a website using HTML and CSS. Now let's prepare for interviews by diving into the top 50 HTML interview questions and their detailed answers. You will gain insights into common challenges, best practices, and how to articulate your HTML skill effectively.
The first and the most common question is, what is HTML? Now, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it is a language of the World Wide Web. It is also a standard text formatting language which is used to create and display pages on the web. HTML makes the text more interactive and dynamic. It can also turn text into images, tables, links. So the HTML pages are saved by adding the .html or .html in web page name. So this scripting language is the most basic thing that you must know about before starting your career in web development. Now moving on to the next question, what is the difference between HTML elements and tags? Now people often get confused between these two things that we use commonly in HTML. So the HTML element is an individual component of the HTML web page or the document. So for example, the title element represents the title of the document. On the other hand, we have the tags. Now this is the root of the HTML document which is used to specify that the document is HTML. For example, the head tag is used to contain all the head element in the HTML file. So I hope now you're clear about how these two things are very different from each other. Now moving on to the next question, what are the attributes and how do you use them? So each tag has certain additional attributes that change the way the tag behaves or is displayed. For example, you might have an input tag that has a type attribute which you can use to specify whether it will be a text field or a checkbox, radio button, or one of many such options. Now attributes are specified directly after the name of the tag inside the two angled brackets. They should only ever appear in opening tags or in self-closing tags, but they can never be in the closing tags. So here is an example where you see that we have used the input type. So we have three different types here. First we have the text field. So for that our input type is text. Then we have a checkbox for which the input type is checkbox. And finally we have a radio button for which the input type is radio and the value is on. So this is how you can have different attributes for your input type. Now the next question is, what is the difference between a block level element and an inline element? Now a block level element is actually drawn as a block that stretches to fill the full width available to it. That is the width of its container and will always start on a new line. So with the help of this block, you will have a full width. That is, if you are viewing a web page, it will show you the entire web page with the full width of it. So here the elements that are block level by default are the div tags, the image tag, section, form, and the navigation tag. Now talking about the inline element, these elements are drawn where they are defined and only take up space that is absolutely needed. So the easiest way to understand how they work is to look at how the text flows on a particular page. Now the example of elements that are inline by default include the span tag, bold, strong, then the anchor tag and also the input tag. So this was the main difference between a block level element and also an inline element. Now moving on, when are comments used in HTML? Now to understand your code easily, you can always add code comments to your HTML document. Now these are actually not displayed in your browser, but they just help you in leaving notes for yourself and as well as other developers as to what a section of HTML is for. So suppose you want to explain a code to someone, you can just write the comments beside that particular line of code and the other person can understand that easily. So the start of the comment is denoted by the less than, an exclamatory hyphen, and the end is marked by hyphen, the greater than symbol. Now anything in the middle will be completely ignored even if it contains valid HTML. So here is an example. You can see that this is the way how we can write comments in our HTML code. So we have the beginning with the less than symbol, then we have an exclamatory sign and then hyphen, and inside this whatever you write will be taken as a comment and it will not be considered even if it contains any sort of valid HTML code. Now moving on to the next question. What are the HTML tags used to display the data in the tabular form? So there are various tags that we can use while building our table in HTML. So let's have a look at the list of tags that we use to display data in the tabular form. So for that, first we have the table tag. So this is the main tag that will define your table. After that, we have the tr tag. Now this tag defines a particular row in a table. So in order to insert or define any row in your table, you need the tr tag. After that, we have the th tag. Now this tag defines a header cell in a table. So in a table, wherever you're writing the heading for any row or any sort of column, you have to use the th tag. Next, we have the td tag, and this is used to define a cell in a table. Now next up we have the caption. This is simple, it will just define the table caption for you or whatever you're naming your table to be. And then we have the column group, that is col group. Now this specifies a group of one or more columns in a table for formatting. And similarly we have another col tag. Now this is used with the col group element to specify column properties for each column. Next we have the t-body tag. Now this tag is used to group the body content in a table. And then we have the t-head, which is used to group the header content in a table. And finally we have the t-footer tag. Now this tag is used to group the footer content in a table. So these are some of the most common tags that we use while creating a table in HTML or while inserting any elements inside a table. Now moving on to the next question, how to create a hyperlink in HTML. Now the HTML provides an anchor tag to create a hyperlink that links one page to another page. These tags can appear in the form of an unvisited link, visited link, or an active link. So you might have noticed whenever you go to any particular web page, there are certain sections of that particular website that might redirect you to a different website. So this is where the hyperlink comes in. So we have the unvisited link. Now this is displayed and underlined in blue, and the visited link is underlined in purple, whereas the active link is underlined in red. So here you can see the syntax of hyperlink in HTML. So we have our anchor tag, and inside that we have the href, inside which you are going to insert the particular link to the website that you are linking it to. And then you can write any link text for this as well. So this is how you can create a hyperlink in HTML. Now next up, name some common lists that are used when designing a page. Now there are many common lists used for designing a page. So you can choose any or a combination of the different list types. So here we have three different types of list. First is the ordered list, then unordered, and then finally the definition list. Now for the ordered list, this list displays elements in a numbered format. That is, it is represented by the OL tag. Now talking about the unordered list, this list displays the elements in a bulleted format and it is represented by the UL tag. And finally, for the definition list, it displays elements in a definition form like in a dictionary. So the DL, DT and DD tags are used to define the description list. Now the next question is, what is semantic HTML? Now semantic HTML is basically a coding style. So it is the use of the HTML markup to reinforce the semantics or meaning of the content. So for example, we have the B tag which is used for bold statement and also the I tag which is used for the italic statement. But in semantic HTML, what happens is instead of the B tag and the I tag, we use the strong tag and the EM tags. So with the help of the strong tag, we make any particular element as bold, and with the help of the EM tag, we make it italics. It is used in the same way where we have one opening strong tag and then we have another closing one, same with the opening EM and closing EM tag. Now next up, how to create a nested web page in HTML. So the HTML iframe tag is used to display a nested web page. Now in other words, it represents a web page within a web page. So the HTML iframe tag defines an inline frame. So you can see here is an example for creating a nested web page in HTML. So for that, we have the basic HTML and the body tag, and inside which we have an H2 tag where I have just written it to be HTML example. And now inside this, we have the iframe. Now what happens inside the iframe tag is we have a source code to another website. So here I have taken the example for the Edureka.co website. And I have given the height and width which will specify the size of the iframe. So what happens is this height and width attribute will specify the size of my iframe and this will be nested inside my web page. So this is basically creating a web page inside another web page. So this is how the nested web page works in HTML. Now moving on to the next question, what is an image map? Now an image map is used for linking many different web pages with the help of a single image. Now this is represented by the map tag. So you can define shapes in images that you want to include as part of an image mapping. The next question is, does a hyperlink only apply to texts? The answer is no, because hyperlinks can also be used on texts and images. Now the HTML anchor tag defines a hyperlink that links one page to another page. And the href attribute is the most important attribute of the HTML anchor tag. So here you can see that there's a syntax for the hyperlinking. So we have the anchor tag and href, and inside this you can put up the link to which you are linking it to and then provide any particular link text. You can also link any particular image here. You just have to insert the source to the image or the file name for your image. Now next, what is a style sheet? So a style sheet is used to build a consistent, transportable and well-designed style template. You can add these templates on several different web pages. It describes the look and formatting of a document written in the markup language. So when HTML came, it was the most basic web structure. So it provided you only the basic structure where you could just create the most basic web page. But style sheet helps you in adding different styles or different templates to your web page itself. You can add different formatting and also you can change your texts, and different styles can be added as templates on several web pages. Now the next question is, explain the layout of HTML. Now this HTML layout specifies a way in which the web page is arranged. So every website has a specific layout to display the content in a particular manner. And now we have different HTML elements that are used to define the different parts of a web page. So let's have a look at the different elements. So first of all, we have the HTML tag, and then we have the head, then title, and then we have our body section, And finally, we have our H1 tags or the P tags. So for that, we have H1, H2, H3, and many more heading tags. And then we have the paragraph tags. Now talking about the head tag, it is used to define a header for a document or a section. We also have another navigator tag, and this defines a container for navigation links. Then we have section, which is used to define a section in a document. And then we have article, which is used to define an independent self-contained article. And then we also have another aside tag, which is used to define content aside from the original content. And finally, we have a footer, which is used to define a footer for a document or a section. Now next up, what is a marquee? Now a marquee is used for scrolling text on a web page. It scrolls the image or text up, down, left or right automatically. So you should just put the text which you want to scroll within the marquee tag. So you just have to use this tag and insert your text inside this particular tag, and also specify if you want to scroll the image or the text in which direction, that is up, down, left or right. The next question is, what are the tags that are used to separate a section of texts? Now for separating a section of text, we can use different tags. So for this, we mainly have three tags, that are the BR tag, the P tag, and the block quote tag. Now firstly, we have the BR tag. Now usually this tag is used to separate the line of text. So this breaks the current line and also conveys the flow to the next line. And then we have the P tag. Now this contains the text in the form of a new paragraph. And finally, we have the block quote tag. Now this is used to define a large quoted section. So if you have a large quotation, then you just have to put the entire text within the block quote tag. So these were the three different tags that you can use in order to separate a particular section of texts. Now the next question is, what is the difference between the div tag and the span tag in HTML? Now the difference between the span and the div is that a span element is inline and usually used for a small chunk of HTML inside a line, such as inside any particular paragraph. Whereas the div or division element is the block line, which is equivalent to having a line break before and after it and used to group larger chunks of code. So here is an example where you have the division tag, where I have specified the element to be HTML, and inside that we have a span. So inside that span I have specified the class as webdev and the text is interview. So you can see that the span is an inline element, whereas the division tag is the block line element. Now moving on, what is the purpose of using alternative texts in images? So the purpose of using the alternative texts is to define what the image is about. Now during an image mapping, it can be confusing and difficult to understand what hotspots correspond to a particular link. So these alternative texts come in action here and put a description at each link, which makes it easy for users to understand the hotspot links easily. Also, in case your web page is not loading due to certain internet connection issues, you can just see the alternative text in the image and figure out what it is trying to show, or whether it is a relevant image or not. Now moving on, how to create a new HTML element. So you can create new elements for the document in different ways. So here's the first example where you just have to put the element inside the script tag, and here you have document.createElement, and inside that you just have to put your element inside the double quotes. This is the simplest method of creating your element. You can also use it in the HTML, where you just have to use the myElement tag, and inside that write your element or whatever text you want to insert, and then close the myElement tag. It's very simple to create any particular new element in HTML. So you can use either of these two methods to insert a new element. Now next up, is the doctype HTML tag considered as a HTML tag? Now this is a confusing question because a lot of people think that this doctype HTML is actually an HTML tag. But the answer is no. The doctype HTML declaration is not actually an HTML tag. Now there are many types of HTMLs such as the HTML 4.01 strict, 4.01 transitional, then we have the frame set, then we have XHTML 1.0 strict, transitional, frame set, etc. Now this doc type HTML is actually used in order to instruct the web browser about the HTML page. So this is not basically a tag for the HTML, it is just used for the instruction purpose. Now the next question is, why is a URL encoded in HTML? Now an URL is encoded to convert the non-ASCII characters into a format that can be used over the internet, because a URL is sent over the internet by using the ASCII character set only. So if a URL contains characters outside the ASCII set, the URL has to be converted, and the non-ASCII characters are replaced with a % symbol followed by the hexadecimal digits. Now next up, what is the use of an iframe tag? So now this iframe is actually used to display a web page within a web page, and how we can use this iframe to create a nested web page in HTML. So this is also similar to that. So the syntax for iframe is we have the iframe tag, and then we have the source where we insert the particular URL that we want to insert into the web page. And next up we have the example for our iframe. So here I've taken an example where you have the source code as any particular demo iframe.html. So you just have to specify the width and height of your iframe, that is the particular width and height that you are going to insert inside that web page. So this creates a frame of this particular dimension inside your original web page. Here is another example to target to a particular link. So I've taken the link for edureka.co inside my iframe source and also given it the name as iframe A. So this is how you target to a particular link. Now moving on to the next question, what are the entities in HTML? So the HTML character entities are used as a replacement for reserved characters in HTML. So you can also replace characters that are not present on your keyboard by the entities. Now these characters are replaced because some characters are reserved in HTML. So suppose by mistake you have used up certain elements which are actually the reserved characters in HTML, they will be automatically replaced, and the replacement values are actually called as the entities in HTML. Next up, can you create a multicolored text on a web page? The answer to this question is yes, you can create a multicolored text on a web page. Now, in order to create this multicolored text, all you have to do is use the font color tag. So what happens here is that you have the font tag, and inside that you specify the color that you want to use for your font. So you can specify any particular color that you want your font to be. Suppose you want your font to be in red color. Inside the font color tag, you can specify the color to be red. And in this way, you can provide different colors to the different texts present in the web page. Now, the next question is how to make a picture of a background image of a web page. Now, in order to make a picture, a background image on the web page, all you have to do is put the body background tag code after the head tag. So right after you have written your HTML code and you have closed your head tag, you have to specify the body background equal to and then provide the particular image that you want to set as the background image on your web page. So you just have to write body background equals to the name or the source of that particular image. Now this will replace your background into that particular image. Now moving on to the next question. What is the use of a span tag? So we have already seen in the previous question how we have used the span tag and also the difference between the div and the span tag. Now this span tag is actually used for adding color on the text or in order to add any background on text, also to highlight any color text. So here is an example on how you can use this particular span tag. So for that you have the span style, and you can specify the color. You can either put it in the hexadecimal value or the color you want to add here, and then you have the text and you close the span tag here. So with the help of this tag, you can add color to your texts or also add the background and highlight any of these and specify the color inside this particular span tag itself. So this is basically used for styling your elements or your texts inside the web page. Now moving on to the next question, what is the advantage of collapsing white space? So the white spaces are a blank sequence of space characters which is treated as a single space character in HTML. Now because the browser collapses multiple spaces into a single space, you can also indent lines of text without worrying about multiple spaces. Now this enables you to organize the HTML code into a much more readable format. Now next up, is there any particular way to keep the list elements straight in an HTML file? Now the answer to this is by using indents, you can always keep the list elements straight. So if you indent each sub-nested list in further than the parent list, you can easily determine the various lists and also the elements that it contains. So this is one way through which you can always keep your list elements straight in the HTML file. Now the next question is, explain the key differences between local storage and session storage objects. Now the key differences between the local storage and session storage objects are that the local storage object stores the data without any expiry date. That is, it can hold it for as long as you want it to. However, the session storage object stores the data for only one particular session. So if you log out of one session and get into the other, you wouldn't find that session storage object. Now, in the case of a local storage object, data will not delete when the browser window closes. However, the data gets deleted if the browser window closes in the case of session storage objects. And finally, the data in the session storage is accessible only in the current window of the browser. But in case of the local storage, the data can be shared between multiple windows of the browser. So these were some of the differences between the local and the session storage objects. Now moving on to the next question, when is it appropriate to use frames? Now frames can actually make navigating a site much simpler and easier. So if the main links to the site are located in a frame that appears at the top or along the edge of the browser, the content for those links can be displayed in the remainder of the browser window. So this makes your navigating quite simpler because you will have a different frame or it will be displayed in a remainder of the browser window so that you can easily view or see where you can navigate in order to reach the content of those links. The next question is how to insert a picture into a background image of a web page. Now, in order to insert this picture into the background image, you just have to use the body background tag that we have already discussed, where you can use the background which is used inside your body tag. So now this comes right after you have closed your head tag. So inside the body, you will specify your background and specify the image file or the source file for your image. And automatically your background image will be changed into the web page. The next question is, what happens if you open the external CSS file in a browser? Now, when you try to open the external CSS file in a browser, the browser cannot open the file because the file has a different extension. Now, the only way to use an external CSS file is actually to reference it using the link tag within another HTML document. So what happens here is that you have to use the link tag and put it inside another HTML document from where you can link it to your actual CSS file in a browser. Now moving on, what is the hierarchy that is being followed when it comes to the style sheets? Now, if a single selector includes 3 different style definitions, the definition that is closest to the actual tag takes precedence. So suppose inline style takes priority over the embedded style sheets, which takes priority over the external style sheets. So you can say that inline styles definitely takes the priority here. And also one more thing to keep in mind is that the definition that will be the closest to the actual will take precedence any day. Now moving on to the next question, how do you create a text on a web page that allows you to send an email when clicked? Now to change the text into a clickable link to send an email, you need to use the mail to command. Now this command is used within the href tag. You can put it inside the href tag, that is the anchor tag href equals to, then use the mail to command and insert your mail address inside this and also add the text that is to be clicked. So what will happen here is you'll just create a link here. So as soon as you click this link, you will write a mail to the particular email address that you have inserted inside that particular link. Now this will allow you to send an email as soon as you click this particular link. Now the next question is, how are active links different from the normal links? So the default color for the normal and active link is blue, and some browsers recognize an active link when the mouse cursor is placed over that link, whereas others recognize the active links when the link has the focus. Those that do not have a mouse cursor over that link is considered to be just a normal link. So basically you can differentiate between the active and the normal links based on the color and also when you place the cursor over that particular link. Now moving on, the next question is, what are the different tags to separate sections of text? Now we already know about the BR tag, but this is just one way to separate the line of texts. There are other tags like the P tag and block quote tag that are used to separate sections of text. So with the BR tag, you can either break the line, and then with the P tag, you can go to the next paragraph. And with the help of the block quote, you can separate into different sections and put the larger section inside a block quote tag. Next up, are there instances where the text will appear outside of the browser? Now by default, the text is wrapped to appear within the browser window. However, if the text is part of a table cell with a defined width, the text could extend beyond the browser window. So in some cases, you might be noticing that if you're writing a table in your HTML code and when you go to the web page, you see that the table extends and goes out of your window. So for that, you have to specify the table width accordingly. And you have to make sure that your table does not go out of the browser. Now moving on, write an HTML table tag sequence that outputs the following. So here they have provided the output where it should look like 50 PCS 100 500 and 10 pieces 550. Now you just have to write one code that will give you this particular output. So this is nothing but creating a table where you will have these particular elements inside that. So you can write the code in the form of a table. So here we have the table, then we have the TR tag for the first row. And inside the first row, we will have three different elements. We have 50 pieces, then we have 100, and then we have 500. And then we will create the next row with another TR tag. And inside that, again, we will insert three different elements, that is 10 pieces, 5 and 50. So this is just one example. You might be asked such similar questions in your interviews where they will give you the output and ask you to write an HTML code. They might give you the output of a table and ask you to create an HTML code for that particular table. At that moment, you just have to remember the elements that you need to insert and create the structure for that particular table. Now the next question is, what is the advantage of grouping several checkboxes together? Now the checkboxes don't actually affect one another, but as soon as you group these checkboxes together, it helps to organize them. So checkbox buttons can have their name and do not need to belong to any particular group either. A single web page can have many different groups of checkboxes. In this way, it just helps you make your web page look a little more organized. Now moving on to the next question, what happens if there is no text between the tags? Does this affect the display of the HTML file? Now, if there is no text present between the tags, there is nothing to format actually. Therefore, no formatting will appear. So some tags, such as the tags without any closing tag, for example, if you have any image tag which do not contain the closing tag, you would not require any text between them. Because if there is no text, there would not be any formatting as well. Next question is, what are the limits of the text field size? Now here the default size for a text field is around 13 characters. However, if you include the size attribute, you can also set the size value to be as low as 1. The maximum size value will be determined by the browser width. Also, if the size attribute is set to 0, the size will be set to the default size of 13 characters. Now moving on to the next question, what is the relationship between the border and rule attributes? Now we have the default cell borders with a thickness of 1 pixel, and these are automatically added between your cells if the border attribute is set to a non-zero value. Similarly, if the border attribute is not included, a default 1 pixel border appears when the rules attribute is added to the table tag. The next question is, what is SVG? Now the HTML SVG is actually used to describe the two-dimensional vector and vector or the raster graphics. Now the SVG images and their behaviors are defined in XML text files. So what happens is the XML files you can create and edit an SVG image with the help of the text editor. Now this one is mostly used for vector type diagrams like pie charts or the two-dimensional graphs in any XY coordinate system. So here is an example that you can see how you can use the SVG in HTML. So you just have to specify the width and the height here, and also you can add the different elements that you want to add. So suppose you want to add a shape. Here I have the X and Y coordinates specified to the value as 50, 50 and the radius to be 40. Also you can specify the width or the color that you want to fill the shape with. So this is how the SVG works in HTML. Now moving on to the next question. What is a button tag? Now the button tag is used in the HTML5. So what you can do is you can use it to create a clickable button within the HTML form on the web page. Not just that, it creates a submit or a reset button as well. And this button tag can be written as you can specify the name first. So suppose here is an example where I have specified the button name to be button, and then you can also specify the type here, and finally you can write the text. Suppose you can just insert click here or submit or anything that you want to specify for your button. Now next up, list the media types and formats supported by HTML. So HTML supports a wide range of media formats for your sound, music, videos, movies, and also animations. Now some of the extensions supported by each of these media formats include the PNG, JPG, JPEG, and the GIF, and many more for your images. Also for your audio, you have the MIDI, the real audio, WMA, etc. And finally, for your video, you have the MPEG, AVI, QuickTime, Real Video, MP4, etc. Now moving on, what is the cell spacing and cell padding? Now cell spacing is referred to as the space or the gap between two cells of the same table, whereas your cell padding is referred to as the gap or the space between the content of the cell and cell wall or cell border. So you can see that you can specify the cell spacing in the following way, where you just have to put the border cell spacing and the value inside your table tag, and also you can specify the cell padding value in the similar way. Now moving on to the next question, what is the difference between HTML and XHTML? Now this is one most frequently asked question. So the differences between HTML and XHTML are: HTML is an application of the standard generalized markup language, whereas XML is an application of the extensible markup language. Now the first one is actually a static web page, whereas the later one is a dynamic web page. Not just that, HTML allows programmers to perform changes in the tags and use different attribute minimization, whereas XHTML, when user need a new markup tag, then user can define it in this. And finally, HTML is all about displaying information, whereas XHTML is all about describing the particular information. So these were some of the differences between HTML and XHTML. Now moving on, how many types of CSS can be included in HTML? Now there are three different ways in order to include the CSS with the HTML. First, we have the inline CSS. Now this is used for styling small contexts. To use inline styles, add the style attribute in the relevant tag. Next up, we have the external style sheet. Now this is used when the style is applied to many different pages. Each page must link to the style sheet using the link tag. Now this link tag goes inside the head section. So here is an example on how you can use the external style sheet. So you have the link to your style sheet, and then you have the type as text or CSS, and finally you have the href where you are linking your CSS file. So you have to just insert your CSS file here in order to link it to your HTML. And the final way is the internal style sheet. Now this is used when a single document has a unique style. So the internal style sheets needs to put in the head section of an HTML page by using the style tag. So here is an example where you have the style type, then you can add the different colors or the margin for your paragraphs, and also add background images inside your body. And here you can specify the URL to your images as well. So this is another way of doing the internal style sheet and also linking your CSS to your HTML. So these were the three main ways how you can link your CSS to your HTML. Now moving on to the next question. What are the logical and physical tags in HTML? Now the logical tags are actually used to tell the meaning of the enclosed text. So the example of the logical tag is the strong tag. So as soon as we enclose the text in the strong tag, it tells the browser that enclosed tag is more important than the other texts. And talking about the physical tags, these are used to tell the browser how to display the text enclosed in the physical tag. So some of the examples include the B tag, which is used for making your element bold. Then we have the big tag and also the I tag. So these are the different examples for your physical tags. Now moving on to the last question, how can you apply JavaScript to a web page? Now in order to make your web page more interactive, you need JavaScript. It is a scripting language that also allows you to interact with certain elements on the page based on user input. As with CSS, there are three main ways to include JavaScript. So first we have the inline method. Now certain HTML elements allow you to execute a piece of JavaScript when a certain event occurs. Now for example, a button allows you to run a script when you click on it. These events are accessed through attributes and differ based on the events that are available on each element. Now here is an example that shows an alert with a message when the user clicks on it. So you have the button tag, and on click you have the alert, click the button. Now this was just one way. Next up we have the script block method. So you can define a script block anywhere on the page, which will get executed as soon as the browser reaches that part of the document. Now this can be inside the head or the body section of your document. So this example shows how you can write the script block. So you just have to insert all your elements inside your script tag where you have specified certain variables, and also you can add the alert here itself. And finally, you have the link to a JavaScript file method. Now this allows you to keep the content of the page separate to how users interact with that content. Also, it allows you to load the same script on multiple pages. Now, as with the script block, you can also load a JavaScript file from the head or the body tag itself. So here you just have to insert your source code inside your script tag, and you can link it to your JavaScript file. So with this, we have come to the end of our top 50 HTML interview questions. Now these are some of the most commonly asked questions, but you can also let us know about more questions if you have faced any such interviews in the recent times. So don't forget to let us know about your opinion or also more questions in the comment section below. And I hope these questions will definitely help you crack the interviews. So all the best. Until then, thank you and happy learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!